Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 18th, 2019 Pittsburgh Board of Public Education and the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit Legislative Meetings. Before we begin this evening, we ask everyone to please turn off your phones or at least put it on vibrate. Would everyone now please rise to salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's our tradition and procedure before the legislative meeting to recognize students and employees of the Pittsburgh Public School District. I'll now turn this portion over to Ms. Mercedes Williams. Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Yes. Chuck Cooper, a Pittsburgh Westinghouse graduate, broke the color barrier by becoming one of the first African-American players in the NBA in 1950. In September, he was elected into the Hall of Fame. His alma mater, Duquesne University, will be naming its new athletic arena after him. His son, Chuck Cooper III, is upholding his legacy through the Chuck Cooper Foundation. Since 2011, the foundation has awarded 65 scholarships, distributing more than $240,000. Its Beacon of Light outreach program, which is housed at Pittsburgh Westinghouse, provides opportunities for foundation leaders, scholarship recipients, and program participants to work with students from elementary school to high school. Please let's welcome Chuck Cooper III and the Chuck Cooper Foundation. Mr. Cooper is also here tonight with a champion of not only Pittsburgh Public Schools, but Pittsburgh Westinghouse, and a representative of State Representative Ed Gainey's office, Brother Melvin Ill. Last week, the New Pittsburgh Courier honored 51 local women, including former board president Valerie McDonald Roberts. Also in the Women of Excellence class of 2019 are two women who have spent their careers advancing work in public education. CTE Executive Director Angela Mike and Pittsburgh Arsenal Pre-K-5 Principal Dr. Ruthie Ray work around the clock to educate and advocate for Pittsburgh children. Please let's welcome Ms. Angela Mike. Pittsburgh Kappa dance phenom Jameer Garland has won the 2020 Young Arts Foundation Award in dance, joining 686 other talented emerging artists from 40 states. Jameer has been recognized for his caliber of artistic achievement and one of the nation's most accomplished artists in the visual, literary, and performing arts. Jameer was selected by an esteemed discipline-specific panel of artists through a rigorous blind adjudication process. This year's award winners represent the top 9.5% of applications across 10 artistic disciplines. Young Arts Awards winners gain access to one of the most prestigious programs in emerging arts. Please let's welcome again Jameer Garland. Jameer is here tonight with his family. He's also here with his teacher who will be retiring in January after 30 years of service. Congratulations to all. This concludes this evening's special presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Okay, we will begin first this evening with the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit. Whoops, Mr. Weiss. That's okay. Mr. Weiss, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Carter?
Here.
Ms. Edwards?
Here.
Ms. Falls?
Present.
Mr. Gallagher?
Here.
Ms. Harbin?
Here.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Present.
Ms. Talaferro?
Here.
Mr. Udine?
Here.
Ms. Wilson?
Here.
All members present.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Will board members please turn to the minutes from last month? Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions? All right, hearing none, I'd like to have a motion and a second. Oh, you have a question? Okay, sorry. Ms. Harbin?
Yes, Ms. Wilson, thank you. I do have a question. Since I wasn't here for that meeting, do the new board members vote on those minutes to approve them?
You can vote, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the November 20th meeting.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion is carried. There's no business for the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit on the committee report on education. The committee report on business and finance that includes agenda items 25.01, 25.02 is before you. Are there any questions or comments that were not answered at agenda review? All right, if there are no further questions or comments, do we have a motion and second for a roll call vote?
So moved.
All in favor? Oh, sorry, yes, right, oh, roll call, sorry, roll call.
Carter? Ms.
Since
Carter?
our-
I'm sorry.
Since our stenographer's not here, maybe we need to repeat who was our motion and our second, so when she listens to the tape. 'Cause-
Carter and Ms. Falls.
Just trying to make it easier for her.
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Ms. Falls?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Ms. Harbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Talaferro?
Yes.
Mr. Udine? Yes. Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Report's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Item 27.01 is the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit Personnel Report. Are there any questions or comments on this report? All right, hearing none, could I have a motion and a second to approve this report? Moved by Ms. Falls, seconded by Ms. Edwards. Roll call.
Ms. Carter.
Yes.
Ms. Edwards.
Yes.
Ms. Falls.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher. Yes. Ms. Harbin.
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy.
Yes.
Ms. Talafaro.
Yes.
Mr. Dean stepped out. Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Report's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Item 28.01 is the Pittsburgh Mount Oliver Intermediate Unit's Financial Travel Report for November 2019. Are there any questions or comments on this report? All right, hearing none, could I have a motion and second to approve this motion? This report. Mr. Carter made the motion,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Kennedy. I believe this is roll call also.
Carter. Yes. Ms. Carter is yes. Ms. Edwards.
Yes.
Ms. Falls.
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher. Yes. Ms. Harbin.
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy.
Yes.
Ms. Talafaro.
Yes.
Mr. Dean. Mr. Dean stepped out. Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Report's approved.
Okay, at this time, I can accept the motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved by Ms. Kennedy, seconded by Ms. Edwards. This, we do not need a roll call vote. All in favor of adjourning this meeting, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? All right, motion, the meeting is adjourned. Okay, at this time, I'd like to call the December 2019 meeting of the Pittsburgh Public Schools to order. Mr. Weiss, can we please have a roll call for this?
Mr. Carter.
Here.
Ms. Edwards.
Here.
Ms. Falls.
Present.
Mr. Gallagher. Here. Ms. Harbin.
Here.
Mrs. Kennedy.
Present.
Ms. Talafaro.
Here.
Mr. Dean. Here. Ms. Wilson.
Here.
All members present.
All right, thank you, Mr. Weiss. At this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Devin Talafaro to share our core beliefs and commitments.
All right. Core beliefs and commitments. Number one, we will educate all children to their highest level of academic achievement. 2, we will provide a safe and orderly environment for all students and employees. 3, we will provide efficient and effective support for all students, families, teachers, and administrators. 4, we will distribute resources in an efficient and equitable manner to address the needs of all students to the maximum extent feasible. And number 5, we will improve public confidence and encourage strong parent-community engagement in the district.
Off my mic. Thank you so much, Ms. Talafaro. Okay, at this time, would the board members please turn to the minutes?
Thank you.
Tonight, we'll be approving the minutes for November 20th, 2019 legislative session. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions? All right, hearing none, could I please have a motion and a second to approve the minutes? Second. Mr. Carter made the motion. Ms. Falls seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Okay, the motion is approved. At this time, I'd like to read the executive session statement. In addition to executive sessions announced at the legislative meeting of November 20th, 2019, the board met in executive sessions on December 9th, 2019, and immediately before this legislative meeting to discuss various personnel matters that may include but are not limited to, administrative vacancies and positions open and closed. The board does not vote at executive sessions. All right, we will now move on to the committee report on education and student performance, which is submitted to you by myself, the chairperson of the Education Committee. The report includes agenda items 5.01 through 8.16. If you would please turn to agenda item 8.11, I'd like to give you the student suspension, transfer, and expulsion numbers for this month. There were 23 students suspended for 4 to 10 days. 6 students were expelled out of school for 11 days or more. Okay, now moving on to the rest of the Education Committee report, there were 2 items that were pulled for further discussion. 6.08 is the first. Ms. Kennedy.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. I actually asked to have both of them pulled because I did not have time to review them between when we learned about it right before agenda review.
And we're referring to 6.08 and 6.09.
But I'm going to stick with 6.08 first in case someone else has questions after my questions. This is about using online resources, cloud resources, et cetera, to collaborate between staff, community members, whoever. If I remember, if I'm reading this correct, is that the correct understanding?
It's, yes, internal and external, so you can reach all stakeholders, but it's completely anonymous.
So how do we make sure that it stays anonymous? I mean, do we have private logins that nobody has access to who this login is, that my login is Terry Kennedy? No one really knows. It's just ID number 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. How do they keep it anonymous?
When you develop the questions have a link, and they go to the link. There is no login whatsoever. The link takes you directly to the question or the survey or whatever it is that we're looking to get feedback on, and they just fill in their information. There is nothing that identifies an individual on that.
So how do people become informed that there's a survey out there?
So there's multiple ways that you can do it. You can post the links to those questions online. So you can do it online. You can send it via email through myself. There's multiple ways you can do it. They can do it on any device as well. So you send it out either how you post it online or if you send it out via email.
So will there be a section of the district website that people can turn to look for links if they're interested? I mean, because if you're the general public, you may not be on these email lists.
Yes, so we can place that, but that's something we would work with Erica Fierby-Jones and her team on how we put that up.
Because I think that's an important detail. I like that we want to collaborate get the general public, especially people that might be more inclined to participate if it's anonymous. Will there be a way, if someone wants to pursue it, that they can give up their anonymity and say, I'd like to have a conversation with someone?
So that, not on the actual resource itself, but they're welcome to reach out to the individual that either started that. We can always leave that open for an email, but it's not in the actual online resource.
So will there be instructions on the online resource for them to how they could reach out?
Yes.
All right, because, we don't know. I don't know about you, my crystal ball doesn't tell me that information. So has there been any piloting of this tool?
So we have used it internally with the academic cabinet to get some feedback on things that we're doing currently to think about, like for Imagine PPS and some of the ideas. And so yes, we have some of those pieces, yes.
And did the outside partners for Imagine PPS also work with that?
Not yet, but if we do move forward with it, they will be able to work with that, yes.
So we only know that insiders with the folks inside the district with district equipment that this works fine. Do we know from the vendor if there's any restrictions on equipment for browsers or anything?
It's completely web-based, so it works on any device. It works on your cell phone, any device that we have, so it works on everything. It's web-based.
So they have an app if I was to use it on my phone or my iPad?
You don't need an app. It's all web-based.
Okay. And so they've tested it out, because there's, a bunch of different browsers out there, and I still go on some places that say it's best if you use browser ABC. So do we know that they test it with all the browsers, or do they recommend specific browsers?
There's no specific recommended browser. I've used it on my cell phone. Others have used it on, and so I have an iPhone. Some people have used it on their Galaxies. We've also used it on some of our old computers and also on our new laptops. I've also used it on my own personal home. So there's various ways. I've used it on Internet Explorer. I've also used it on Firefox and also Chrome, and it's worked in all three of those areas.
Okay, that's good to know because, to me, I really look at how people test it. So I'm fine with this, and I thank you for those answers. Ms. Wilson, in case somebody else has questions, I'll wait on the next item.
Does anyone have anything else on 6.08? All right, hearing none.
Thanks, I just figured what was it. So 6.09, so if I read this correctly, this tool is so we can better track professional learning. So if someone does professional learning, internal or external, we know what they've completed, we know what they're meeting credential requirements, et cetera. Am I correct in my understanding?
So there's multiple ways that the product can be used. Primarily, we would like to track support that's being provided to our schools from coordinators all the way down to coaches, what support is being provided. You can also look at the analytics and look at the data across to see trends to determine what professional development needs we're seeing that we can provide at the district level. You can also track and align all the things that we're doing, whether it's from professional learning down to coaching, if it's aligned to any of our strategic goals, and track that. We can also look at some of our clear identified initiatives and track to see how that's going as well through schools. So there's multiple ways that you can track it. It's customized data, but it allows you an opportunity to look across all content areas and all trends to see the needs of schools and be able to provide better support.
So who will be maintaining and tracking? Would that be Mr. Dwyer, Dr. Dwyer's organization?
So it would be a combination of myself, the chief of schools, so Dr. Maystein, as well as Dr. Dwyer, all three of us looking at that, and then looking at trends through executive cabinet and sharing that information with the superintendent.
So if someone needs to have data added to it, say a teacher has some information, they have to contact one of you folks to get it added, or can anybody add information?
So right now, we didn't want to get down to the teacher level. It's really around the supports that we're providing to schools and what that looks like. So if they wanted a specific area of focus, so for example, we currently track the implementation of MTSS process. And if we wanted to look at how many times we've provided support in schools around Tier 1 supports with regards to core instruction, we can analyze that data if somebody wants to add something else, like how many times we've provided Tier 2 supports around, let's say, Reading Horizons. We can look at that and pull that data. So there's ways that we can track different things and the support that's provided, but primarily it's around support.
Okay, and has there been any pilot done of this tool?
Not at this time.
Have you investigated any other school districts that have used this tool for the same capabilities we would like to use the tool?
So I've looked at other districts that have used it, and I've reached out to a couple others. They are not as extensive as what we're looking to do in there, but as far as the data reporting, it's very customizable, and they do like the fact that you can track and trend and look at the trends across the entire district, and the fact that it starts at the district level all the way down to the school level, and you can examine the supports that are provided.
Did we ask the vendor for the ability to pilot this tool?
We have not.
So you're asking for the board to approve something that we haven't tried out ourselves in our district?
So we currently have multiple programs that we've used and we've attempted to do to track support to schools. We've exhausted all internal options from Qualtrics to our Performance Matters system, and none of those have the capabilities to go as deep as this one does. We have looked at it, we've put it, examined it with how we want to look at using it within the district. We were able to see the customizable data. I'm sure we can possibly look at a pilot, but at this point we don't have any way of tracking support from the district level down to coaching support as well.
And I appreciate that, but I'm very wary of doing anything. You know, back when I worked in industry, while I would call around for references on, whatever we were looking to do, I would also, there was no way my boss was going to approve it without an internal, let's see if we could do what we wanted to do, because no matter how many people you call or how many places you want, you don't know their true biases. It's just like looking up a review online of a place and you don't know, are those true, are those accurate or not? So I have a real problem if we have not even piloted this. And so I'm not going to, based on that, I am not going to be able to support this. That's my personal opinion with my background.
That's
But I
fine.
appreciate what you're trying to do, and I wish you had piloted it and could say it was a successful pilot, because the tool sounds useful, but I can't approve it without a pilot test.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you for your responses. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you, Mrs. Kennedy. Okay, at this time, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Is there a performance piece of this contract if the program doesn't perform up to what you expect, that we don't have to pay?
So having different conversations, at any point, we can get out of the contract. Right now, we don't even have the contract design. It has to be approved first by the board, and then we go into contract. And we can ensure that there is a clause that if there's any way that we can get out of the contract, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Harbin?
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. So what about our special ed department? Are we going to be tracking also support that's coming from there?
All support, yes, absolutely. It's all of CNI, which will fall under curriculum and instruction, Office of Professional Learning, as well as the support that's provided from our programs with students with exceptionalities, as well as our English learners. It's our ESL department as well.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, yes.
Item 702 has a placeholder that, and with a TBD, that number is $500.
Thank you so much. All right, any other questions or concerns in this area? Okay, Mr. Carter and then Ms. Harbin.
Idle 10, oh, nope, you said it, 7.02, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Harbin.
There's an item that I didn't request to be pulled, but can I ask questions now?
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So item 5.02, this is the Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Children and Families, Early Childhood. I understand that this is, we're approving the ability for the Early Childhood Department to go out for this grant. And I have asked some questions this week, and I do have a concern that that what we're doing, and I understand the need, that we do have some children in our early childhood settings that have extreme behaviors, but the proposal is to have a segregated setting for these children. So to create a program where we pull children from the inclusive setting and put them in a segregated setting to get some intensive social emotional learning. I believe that any programs that we are going to do for any of our children, especially we're getting grant money that we can use for different things, I think we should look for a program that is an inclusive program. I don't support taking kids out of their general ed environment with their peers. These are babies, 3 and 4-year-olds that, are learning, and they might need some more support, but I think the support should be pushed into the classroom where the teachers that are in that classroom can gain skills. We can build capacity for everybody in that space, and kids won't feel like they're not wanted, and so they have to leave and go to a different space. So as it is written, I'm going to have to vote no unless we can say that yes, when that grant opportunity comes in, we will look at doing something to support these children, but in an inclusive setting.
So just to clarify, so when we think of the response to intervention process, the Tier 2 interventions are provided in the classroom as a push-in. For Tier 3 support services, these are for students who are not responding to the Tier 1 or the Tier 2 interventions that are being provided as a push-in per se. The ultimate goal is that when you think of the Tier 3 response, it could be done in time, space, or in resources. And so we can definitely look at how we can utilize it. Is it time, is it space, or resources when it comes time if we do get the grant?
I'm not sure I understand. So you're saying that if this grant does come up, I mean, we'll have a second chance to vote on this, right? Does that make, I mean, I'm voting just
To get the grant.
to get the grant.
And then you have to
but
accept the grant.
Then I have to accept,
Yes.
but what I'm saying right now is if I vote yes on this, I am not going to vote yes on a non-inclusive program. So I could,
So that would be
I
correct.
probably, okay.
Yeah.
So I might vote no now just to register that. Thank you.
Are there any other further questions or comments on this section? Mr. Udine?
I had requested previously that all major contracts come with a report that indicates whether or not the contract has been either sole sourced or competitively bid, and also that the administration conduct an assurance, or at least provide an insurance that the contract has been explored for conflict of interest. And perhaps we should have some discussion about where in the whole process is it best to have that report. Is it done at agenda review or at some other report, some other time? But we need to establish what the practice is going to be, give clear direction to the staff so that whenever a contract is coming up, they know automatically to attach those assurances to the contract.
The sole source information is attached for this particular item, but I think your recommendation will be best served, great idea, best served if you work through the Business and Finance Committee. That's the administration and the board working together to come up with these new policies and standard operating procedures to move forward. But the information you're asking for this particular item is attached as a sole source.
Yeah, I'm not questioning this particular item. I'm questioning future contracts, and the staff may also want to consider where the floor threshold ought to be. Contracts over 50,000, 75,000, 100,000, you can come back with a recommendation as to where that threshold should be.
Okay, thank you. I think we have that. We've made note of all those items that you've asked for.
Thank you.
Certainly. Okay, any other further questions or comments for items 5.01 through 8.16? All right, hearing none, could I please get a motion and a second to approve this report?
So moved.
Mr. Carter made the motion and Ms. Falls seconded. Okay, do we have to have a roll call for this? Yes, all right, roll call vote, please,
Carter?
Mr. Weiss.
Yes on the report as a whole, and I will be abstaining on 6.08 and 6.09.
6.08
And
and
six-
09.
And, yep, thank you.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Excuse me, Ms. Falls?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Ms. Harbin?
Yes on the report as a whole, no on 5.02.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes on the report as a whole, no on 6.09.
Ms. Talaferro?
Yes.
Mr. Udine?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson?
Yes.
Report's approved.
All right, thank you. We'll now move on to the committee report on business and finance and minority business enterprises that is before you, that has been submitted by Mr. Salah Eddin, chairperson, and his committee. The report includes items 10.01 through 12.07, and at this time we'll recognize Ms. Capretta.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. 10.06, we would like to reject the bids. The lowest bidder did not sign the form. 10.27, we just need to remove the placeholder and award that to gray waste management.
Question, you said 10.06 is the rejection of the bid
Yes, it is.
for gray waste management?
No. I mean,
Because that's
Well,
what my
yes.
10.06
6
is.
was, yes, yes. Yes, because they did not sign a particular document in their bid, so we have to reject it.
That's not what the board tab for 10.06 says. It's asking us to enter into a contract.
Correct, you were talking about the bidding paperwork that they submit with the bid?
Right.
So the bid itself was incomplete, is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, yes.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, Ms. Capretta's reading in changes to the already listed board tab. So while that board tab currently says we're awarding it to Gray Waste Management because of not signing paperwork, we're forced to reject it, so this is a revision to the tab.
Thank you.
10.27, we just need to remove the placeholder and award that to Gray Waste for $907,374.
I'm sorry, Ms. Capretta, I have to stop you again. I am not reading what you are reading on these board tabs here. 2.7,
Yes.
thank you.
12.02, the capital reimbursement resolution. The original resolution, we were asking for $43,455,680. We are reducing that amount by $3,484,000 to have a capital borrowing next year for $39,971,000. 12.03 is related to the same item that we were reducing the capital budget. Okay, $360, for a difference of $3,484,320. 12.03, the capital program, we are changing that amount to $39,971,360.
Excuse me, so it sounded like you originally said that amount also for 02, and then did you just change 02, or I'm really confused.
Okay, so they're both board tabs, 12.02 and 12.03, are related to the capital budget. One item is an item that gives the administration the authorization to advance money to the capital project fund before we borrow, so we can invest, have timely funding of our projects. 12.03 asks the board to actually establish the 2020 capital plan, which is the major maintenance fund and the capital projects fund. So they just both are for the same amount,
Okay.
but they are actually two different actions. That one gives authorization to front money up front to the capital projects, and the second one asks the board to authorize the 2020 capital project.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that I understood the changes you were explaining. Thank you.
Okay. And,
Yes.
and 11.04, we want to pull the insurance bid for the art because we have not received a bid cost in a timely fashion, and that will be brought to the board next month for approval.
Mr. Joseph, did you have something?
Oh, no, Ms. Capretta covered it.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to go back to 10.06, the first change. I see that there were other bidders, so why are we not awarding to the next lowest bidder?
The next two lowest bidders do not have the proper asbestos certifications that are specified in the bid.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood why reject all bids then.
Yes.
That makes sense to me. Thank you.
Okay, there was one item that was pulled last week for further discussion. It was 12.07.
And that was by me again because it was walked on at the last minute, and I'm fine with approving it as it is written, so I do not need it to discuss it anymore. I'm not saying anything about anyone else, though. Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments in this section? Ms. Harbin?
Hi. Yes, I'd like to acknowledge that I did get a new PowerPoint, and it does explain the new terms, or 50% in 35 years, which are in line with the, which I can't remember, the new ordinance from the city. But my question, though, is still the MBE, WBE. It has MBE, WBE, and then union, 8% for all of that. And I don't really understand it.
I'm assuming that we're going to get a response here. Mr. Joseph?
Yes, I am trying to pull up some information I received.
It's page 11 of the new presentation.
Mr. Joseph is pulling up some information to give that to you.
So based on the information that when we had a follow-up with the company, it was stated that the 8% was, when we asked the question about MBE, WBE goals, it was stated that it was 8%, the 8% goal for both of those. The information does also state union contractor participation. It's not clear if that is 8% union participation or if that's the whole, but I can look over at the representatives who are here and they can give me a nod if that 8% applies to MBE and WBE. So it's a so that applies to the 8% is the combination of MBE and WBE, not 8% union participation. I think it's implied that the project will have union participation, but not at the 8% level. So it's a combination of MBE, WBE is at 8%.
What's the commitment for union participation?
So there's no definitive commitment for the union participation at this point in time.
Without a whole lot of people asking, I think 8% is pretty much not comfortable with the rest of the board members here. If 8% is only going to be that amount of minority women, but also union as well, this being a union town, this is not voting very well right now. I think Mr. Carter's next.
I'm just going to say that they should be ashamed of themselves for even coming to this board with an 8% goal for the total percentage of minority women and union contract on this particular project that has only 10% affordable units in the entirety of it. I think that it is trash. Thank you.
Ms. Harbin, did you have something additional?
My suggestion would be that we pull this item this month and have them go back and look at it again and come back and bring it next month. You know, this is a time where we are being asked to vote on a tax increase, and we are also asked to give a tax abatement at the same time. I think it's bad timing in general, but I think this union participation, MBE, WBE participation is very important to us, and I think instead of throwing it away, I would like to, I don't know how to do this, Mr. Weiss, but make an amendment.
I would suggest if the board wishes to defer action, that there be because it's on the agenda now, there be a motion to table, and it can be taken up at a future meeting.
I make a motion to table this item.
I second.
Wait a minute, wait. The-
Yes, Ms.
the
Capretta.
The administration would like to pull this item then, so we don't have to table it and bring it,
All right, so it's being,
allow them
I
to bring
would
it
say
back.
that we continue with the motion because it's already in play. I think that if the administration wants to pull items from the agenda, they should do it before the start of our meeting as a rule of thumb. I think that once it gets to this table and we have the obligation to vote on it, that it should go through the voting process as any other item on this agenda would.
Can we ask
Mr.
the
Joseph?
solicitor? I just want a clarification, so that was a suggestion. I just want a clarification on, from the solicitor as to if there is a time frame that the administration can pull items from the agenda based on the suggestion.
It is my belief that the administration shouldn't be able to pull items from the board agenda, seeing that it is the board's agenda. But, you know, if Mr. Weiss would provide some clarification, that'd be great.
Well, the history has been that it's been a mixed practice. There have been items pulled at the table. In fact, I can recall several times this year it's been pulled. I mean, the goal of this is to give the administration and the developer the opportunity to address the issues that have been raised at the table. So I think that,
Can they pull it after the motion has already been made?
well, there's really no rule about that. I mean, the administration's asked to pull it. It's a simpler process, but if the board wishes to dispose of the motion to table, we can do that. If it's not tabled, then the administration may wish to pull it. Up to the board. There's a motion on the floor.
There is a motion on the floor, and to be quite honest, whether we table it or pull it, it still gives time for further information to be gathered. The issue with tabling, it usually is just when is it going to be brought up, and I think the intent here is to at least table through to the next meeting, which would give enough time, whether we're pooled or we vote on this motion, that will give time for the developer to further work out the problems that we're discussing and come back with a definitive information for next month. Ms. Harbin.
Yeah, just point of clarification. I'm curious to why the pulling it versus tabling it is an issue. Is it just because if we pull it, I mean, if we table it with the motion that's on the table right now, then there's a chance that we won't bring it back? Is that the concern? Okay, so.
If it is, excuse me, if it's tabled, then there has to be a formal motion to bring it back on the table at a future meeting. And if that is passed, then the board will consider the merits of the motion.
So can I amend my motion to table it until next month?
Yes.
And I'll
Okay.
still second that.
Okay.
So with that amended motion, then do we still need to have a motion next month to bring it back and untable it?
No, but if we approve this amended motion, no, that means it will come back up.
I'm just making sure, crossing, Ts, dotting Is.
Robert's rules, following Robert's rules. If we vote to approve this amended motion, that means it will be back up next month.
Right. So
Yes, Mr. Udine.
we have a motion and a second on the motion to table. That's not a debatable motion, so I'm going to have a roll call on that particular. This is a motion to table until the legislative meeting in January. Mr. Carter?
No.
Ms. Edwards?
Okay, let me be clear then. We're voting on tabling it right now?
Till next month.
Then yes to that.
Okay. Ms. Falls?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher? Yes. Ms. Harbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Talaferro,
Yes.
Mr. Dean,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Okay, the motion to table carries, so that item will not be part of the business report when you vote on the report.
Yes, Mr. Dean.
I'd like to know whether or not the MBE office has reviewed the MBE participation in this application.
No, they have not. I can reach out to Ms. Paula Castle.
So the the EBE office reviews the participation on the contracts where we set goals, where the district is procuring a service or a good. The EBE office does not review participation on applications such as, for tax abatements, such as loiters or TIFs.
And the reason?
Because that was never in their function. Their function was to review the activities for procurement activities for the district and not on tax abatements. Since the district does not have a specified goal for tax abatements, that wasn't something that was part of their function.
The district doesn't have a specified goal for anything. In terms of the MBE participation, she reviews all of the proposals and she comes up with her own estimate of what the MBE participation ought to be. I don't need a prolonged discussion about this, but I would request that the MBE office review the MBE participation terms in this LERTA prior to its resubmission.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Carter.
No, I would just like to tell our esteemed developers over there that they should thank Ms. Harbin for saving their project.
Ms. Talaferro.
If I can just say quickly that I'm happy that Ms. Harbin made that decision because we have to also look at the assets to this project. I think if the developers are willing to work with our concerns, I think we can also address the assets, which is the parking for Arsenal, which I think is an asset and is important and is why I want to make this work as best as possible. So I just want to be able to say that.
Thank you so much. All right, are there any other further questions or comments in this section? All right, hearing none, could I please have a motion and second to, for approval on this committee? On the business and finance? The whole thing?
Yes, with the revisions that have been made and with the item that was tabled removed. And there were
Exactly.
the changes that were made at the table by Ms. Capretta.
Okay, we did get a motion from Mr. Carter.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Falls, seconded. All right, Mr. Weiss, you want to follow through with the?
Ms. Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Ms. Falls?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher? Ms. Harbin?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy stepped out. Ms. Talaferro?
Yes.
Mr. Dean?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Items approved, as reflected in the minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Weiss. We're now going to move to the Human Resources Report. Item number 13.01 that includes addendums A, B, and C that has been submitted by the from the Personnel Committee. Are there any questions or comments on this report? Ms. Falls.
I would like to make the statement that for addendum C, that those each individuals that, or individual groups or people that are listed be voted on separately.
That can be done, or the board can vote on the item, and as you do with reports, You can vote yes on certain ones and note that you're voting no on others. That may be a little more expeditious way of doing it.
As usual, thank you, Mr. Weiss, for your great advice.
Okay, hearing no further questions or seeing no one else want to discuss further, I'd like to have a roll call vote on the Human Resources Report and addendums A, B, and C.
Carter?
Wait, we didn't get a motion and
I'm sorry.
second yet.
Second.
Mr. Carter and Ms. Kennedy, thank you.
Yes on the report and yes to addendums A, B, and C. Or are we going to do separate votes for those?
There are 3 addenda.
Oh, 3 addendums. So are we voting on all the addendums now?
Voting on all the addenda, and there are items on, I believe it's C, that
Yes.
the board, some of the board members may want to
Say
vote.
no. Yes, I'm going to vote no on addendum C 1D.
Okay, Ms. Edwards?
Also, I'll vote on the report as a whole, but no to addendum C 1D.
Ms. Falls?
Yes, as a report as a whole, but no on addendum C, number 1D.
Okay. Mr. Gallagher?
Yes on the whole report.
Ms. Harbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes on the report as a whole, no on addendum C, number 1D.
Ms. Talaferro?
Yes for the report as a whole, no to addendum C 1D.
Mr. Udine?
Yes on the report as a whole, no on addendum C1D.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Okay, the report as a whole is approved. The item that, I guess it's item E, I don't have it in front of me, but the one that was noted by the members did not pass, so the report's approved, including addenda A, B, and C, except for the noted item.
That's what you call sticking it to the man, Mr. Weiss.
We don't get mad, we get even.
All right, we'll now move to budget matters. Agenda items number 15.01 through 15.05, the 2020 general fund budget and the levying of taxes. We will open discussion and take a roll call vote on each item individually. We'll begin with 15.01, the 2020 general fund budget. Are there any questions or comments on this particular item?
I have a question.
Ms. Edwards.
Before we vote on them, can Attorney Weiss identify what we're going to be voting on in each section, 1501, 02, 03, 04?
For purposes of this first item, 15.01 is the general fund budget. Depending on what happens with that motion, there will be real estate tax, earned income tax, and yearly transfer tax following that separately, followed by the homestead farmstead exclusion, which is an annual action by the board. It's paragraph 15 of your budget there.
Ms. Falls.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Again, Mr. Weiss, I need your advice. If a no vote is for 1501, it can be identified the reasons for that are listed below, correct?
The first vote is on the budget, and it's either as presented. I do believe the budget as constructed does include an increase in the real estate tax, which can be clarified or put on the record by Mr. Joseph. Following that item, if the budget is approved, then the board would proceed to consider 1502 through 1505 individually. You're taking each of these individually.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Weiss.
Mr. Dean.
I have an intention to vote on the a whole operating budget as well as the tax increases. Could we get some guidance as to how to address the debate?
Well, the item before you is the budget right now. Now, if you wish to comment on the budget in terms of the tax increase that is built into the budget, of course, that would be part of that.
Thank you. Comment, if I may. Would you pass it down, please? Yes.
Before you make your commentary, I was going to ask Mr. Joseph if he could highlight some of the key aspects of the budget for the record of this particular meeting and the changes that will occur as a result.
So the budget does include it. The budget represents a 2.4% increase from the prior year. The budget does include in it a 2.3% millage increase that would yield an additional $3.9 million estimated in tax revenue into the budget. The budget does have a operating deficit, and in order to address some of these operating deficit items, we did identify roughly $13.6 million in reductions that are incorporated into between the 2019 budget and the 2020 budget. So this budget is reflective of the rising costs that we have with our costs that are mandated, such as our pension costs and our charter school cost. We do realize that this tax increase will not fully solve the problem, and there will be need to be more work on the part of the administration, as well as working with the city as well as the legislative delegation to try to find ways as an administration to reduce our costs, but also to try to identify alternate sources of revenue that can help address our structural deficit.
If I may continue, the operating budget for Pittsburgh Public Schools has increased every year for the last 5 years. At the same time, Pittsburgh Public Schools student enrollment has declined every year in the last 5 years. Clearly, certain expenses have increased and certain revenue sources have decreased. But rather than reduce our expenses when our revenues decrease, we continue to increase our expenses. Why? Champions of ever-increasing expenditures will try to argue that greater revenues are necessary to educate the children, despite the numerical decline. If that was true, and if student achievement improved commensurate with the input of additional revenue, I would join the ranks of the budget increasers and the tax raisers. But the opposite is true. As the budget swells, and as we have added 400 additional staff over the last 5 years, the achievement gap between black and white students continues and widens to this very day. Reading and math results on the PSSA for black students throughout Pittsburgh Public Schools show a persistent failure in our ability to provide a quality education for our students. Additional money has not resulted in better academic outcomes. Why is this? Black students remain several grade levels behind in reading and math. With as much as we know about brain development and neuroscience when children are learning to read, why aren't our results better? 70 to 80% of black students are less than proficient in reading and math, whether they attend segregated or mixed schools. Why is this? One black school posted a 2% proficiency rate in math in the 2019 PSSA test results. 2%. How can you ask for additional resources to be poured into a system with such colossal academic failure without convincing assurances that the additional funds will be utilized in such a way that these trends will be reversed, and soon? Just expecting and imagining great things will not produce great things. We teach our students that as adults, they will be judged and compensated on their results. We should hold ourselves up as a shining example. I vote no on the budget and no on the tax increase. Thank you.
Ms. Harbin.
So the way I see it, and I think the way it's been presented to everyone at this table, we need both cuts and a tax increase. We've made cuts from the very beginning. We were given a $7.9 million cut, and then they added another 5.9 for a $13.8 million cut. And we're still faced with a $17.4 million deficit in 2021, even with the tax increase. The way I see it, after all of those cuts, and that was 10% in every department, and then cutting into programs that we really didn't want to cut, we're going to have to keep cutting, which means closing schools and cutting staff every year. And the things that I see that are driving these expenses, because our revenues have been flat, it's really our expenses that are causing trouble. And most of it is things we just can't control. So from 2014 to 2020, our charter expenses increased 88%. Our retirement expenses increased 116% in the same time frame. Things we can control, medical insurance increased by 10%, and salaries increased by 23%. That's kind of in line with our revenues. It's these other expenses that we don't have any control over. The state used to give school districts a reimbursement for charter schools until 2011, and then that was ended. So this is real, real money. But I'm not in a hurry to raise taxes. I do believe we should be spending money to give our kids the schools that they deserve. But I think it would be a real great disservice to our children to say that we're going to give you less than what you had last year, because our charter school costs this year are going to be an extra $14 million for 289 students, which is 140 for Catalyst and then a budget for a small amount for the rest. But to say to our students in our schools that we're not going to give you what you had last year, how can we do that? I believe that we need to, as a board, look to efficient and effective budgeting. I agree with you, Mr. Dean, on that. I think our Business and Finance Committee has not been utilized in ways that it could. We shouldn't wait until there's an annual budget discussion to talk about how we want to spend the budget. So I think, you know, you can't vote yes for everything for an entire year and then come to this meeting and complain about it and vote no. I am going to vote for the tax increase. I had constituents and people from all over the city on both sides of this. I understand that there are people on fixed incomes, and this is not good timing with the parks tax, which incidentally is double the tax increase that we're proposing. But if we are going to be hampered by the legislature that isn't going to, give us a reimbursement for the charter school costs that are completely out of control, and frankly, charter schools are profiting off of our students with disabilities. I've mentioned that a few times. If they're not going to do anything about that, I do think they are soon going to look at legislation for cyber charters, which would save us maybe $12 million a year, which is very important. But if they're not going to do that, if they're not going to look at getting our money back from the city, our earned income tax, which is our biggest source of revenue, that diversion should have been sunsetted, frankly, and it wasn't. So, if we can't look to our state legislators to have our back and make sure that we have enough money, then our only choice is to raise our property taxes, which is not a good choice. But to me, that feels like the only choice we have right now. So not only are we being asked to raise our taxes, which we haven't raised in 5 years, by the way, we are going to be asked to come back here and make some drastic cuts. And I think that 6-month process for Imagine PPS gives us a really good opportunity to look at the education delivery model, to look at our feeder patterns, all those tough decisions that have to come next. But that has to happen with the tax increase, in my opinion, or we are failing our children in that way. So I am going to vote yes.
Mrs. Kennedy.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. This board is faced with a difficult challenge tonight of approving a balanced budget given many constraints on revenues and expenditures that are beyond the control of the district. It is my belief that all of us want to do the right thing, even if our opinions differ. I have spent a lot of time obtaining feedback from Board District 5 constituents since the draft budget was revealed on November 4. I attended meetings with community groups and at schools. When I was unable to attend meetings due to conflicts with board meetings, I obtained the feedback from one or more attendees after those meetings. I used materials supplied by the district administration showing the impact of the proposed tax hike on the property owners. In December, I added the presentation from Mr. Joseph. Additionally, people engaged me in discussion about the proposed increase when they saw me in the community or called me. I also received email. The overwhelming majority opinion I heard from Board District 5 constituents at these meetings, through conversations and email, is to not approve a tax hike. And let me provide you with some of the reasons people are against the proposed tax increase. Number one, the negative information they keep hearing through the news media about how the district spends money, including travel, and then the investigations of the district. Number two, the lack of academic achievement within the district and the achievement gap, especially between African American students and Caucasian students. Number three, higher achievement in our district will result in fewer parents choosing charter schools. Number four, the inability for this administration to guarantee the money gained through the tax increase will go directly into the classrooms. Number five, the inability of city residents to absorb an additional increase into their own budgets. All right, that's only some of the city residents, but that's what's been cited by those who have that issue. Number six, it makes no sense to them, the constituents, for us to increase taxes as our enrollment continues to decline. Number 7, the charter expenses hit other struggling districts as well as non-struggling districts. In other words, all school districts need to budget for charter expenses. So they don't see that as a reason. Okay. One of my own reasons for not supporting this increase is a majority of the then board members helped to create the budget problems by approving unfunded mandates. Some of their supporters criticized those of us voting against those items. I find it very ironic that some of these same people mentioned unfunded mandates from the state and federal government without acknowledging the unfunded mandates they lobbied the school board to approve when they spoke to us at this past Monday's public hearing. I heard from one constituent yesterday that her monthly increase in Social Security for next year is $10, while her increased monthly Medicare cost is $9. That leaves $1 per month for all other increased expenses in her budget. Let me tell you, she was very concerned when she spoke to me. Does this sound like someone who can afford to pay more in property taxes? No. And while the property tax rates in the rest of Allegheny County are higher, the wage taxes are significantly lower. In many cases, it is 1% as opposed to the 4% paid in the city of Pittsburgh. The people with earned income can easily justify moving to suburban districts in Allegheny County when they know their overall property and wage taxes combined will be lower, and achievement for the schools district-wide is better than here in Pittsburgh. Our constituents on fixed incomes will not necessarily either buy another house or stay in Allegheny County. Senior citizens may be moving into senior living where their rent is based on their ability to pay. Other people may move to live closer to grandchildren somewhere else in the country, especially in a state with lower taxes. Those people who wish to stay in the area will easily justify moving just outside of Allegheny County. And unfortunately, some of our constituents will become homeless. Some people can easily afford this increase to their taxes. I am happy for them. However, all of us need to remember everyone is just one crisis away from being able to pay their bills: a job loss, losing their home to a fire or landslide, etc., while still having to pay for the property taxes, a medical crisis for themselves or an immediate family member, a need to take unpaid leave with or without being eligible for Family and Medical Leave Act, or FMLA. So now let us look at the numbers. The approved 2019 budget, as put in board docs a year ago, required $652,542,207 in revenues. The millage rate was 9.84, or $0.984 on each $100 of assessed value of taxable real estate. The proposed 2020 budget requires $688,124,155 in revenues. The millage rate is proposed to be 10.07, or $0.1007 on each $100 of assessed value of taxable real estate. A 5% cut of the proposed 2020 budget would result in a budget needing revenues totaling $634,717,947.25. A 2.5% cut of the proposed 2020 budget would result in a budget needing revenues totaling $651,142,105.12. I am making a motion to amend the budget to decrease the overall district budget by $33,406,207.75, which is 5% of the proposed 2020 budget, and to keep the millage rate at 9.84.
Second.
Technically, I know it's been moved and seconded, and I know we don't normally go by Robert's rules, and we'll probably move forward with this. But normally, if you're really following Robert's rules, you don't explain everything first and then make a motion. So that's really the incorrect. But because we haven't technically done this every single time, I guess we will go ahead and follow through with this amendment.
Can you
Just that-
repeat the numbers, please?
Which numbers? The amendment is, I'm making a motion to amend the budget
We have to
to
deal with this
decrease
first.
the overall district budget to $33,406,207.75, which is 5% of the proposed 2020 budget, and keep the millage rate at 9.84.
This amendment, this motion was made and seconded. Do we have discussion? Mr. Carter?
Is this?
Oh, wait a minute, Ms. Falls, you wanted to discuss first. Sorry, you're going on this amendment. Okay, let Ms. Falls go first, please.
Discussion on the amendment.
On the amendment. Okay, go ahead then, Mr. Carter. You might be clarifying her questions.
No, I mean, I guess my concern with the motion is that it's kind of blind in a sense that we don't know where the cuts will come from if it does pass. I understand, Ms. Kennedy's concern for, increase in expenditures, but I'm not necessarily sure that I can support the motion without exactly knowing where the money will be coming from that will be cut.
Ms. Falls?
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. With that being said, from Mr. Carter, does administration have any response to that?
As I said before, we've laid out the budget in a transparent way, understanding where our financial forecast currently is. And let's be real about it. When you talk about $33 million, you're talking about schools, people's jobs. That's teachers, administrators, faculty, and staff. So let's put it on the table, because that's all we have to cut.
I'm not sure that's all we have to cut. Having looked through the budget line by line, I think there are expenditures that can be eliminated, and I'm not looking necessarily at big expenditures. And I'll start with one, and forgive me, Mr. Weiss, but I'm going to pick an item from the law firm budget. There is a $200 reimbursement for periodicals that I think you guys can write off on your law firm taxes. That's an example. So I'm looking at other places than just in the classrooms.
Well, to be clear, somehow I've gotten involved in this debate. The $200 for periodicals is for the law department and not for my law firm. The school district pays no money directly to me for periodicals of my law firm. These are periodicals that are for the law department that are necessary for operation. To the extent that this $200 makes a difference, I want that to be clear.
I thank you, but looking through the budget, I have pulled out different things, and I don't have the full list with me, but I think that more decreases can be made without hitting the schools and hitting employees.
Ms. Harbin, and then Ms. Delaferro.
Yeah, I'd just like to remind everybody that salaries and benefits are 51% of the budget. Special education is 13% of the budget. Charter schools are 15% of the budget. Transportation's 5% of the budget. What are we at now? 51, 61, 64, 70. I mean, I have absolutely no idea where you're going to get $33 million. Summer Dreamers is $1.25 million. I'm kind of at a loss.
I mean, so Ms. Harbin has already mentioned that when I see 51% of the budget being salaries and benefits, and then that other part, that other chunk that is even things like special education, charter schools, like I can't support something that someone has sat on their own and decided that this is what's not important, and not knowing if that involves equity. If that involves cutting programs that could be really beneficial and that are beneficial to Black and brown children, I can't support and back up something that has just been decided on own. So I just want to say that.
I did not say that the stuff I identified is the stuff they will cut. I just said I have found a bunch of stuff, whether administration would agree to that or make their own different cuts. I'm just saying it's stuff that I have identified. And admittedly, some of the stuff you look and you don't know, what does this mean? So just like Mr. Weiss corrected me on something, but until you explore the cuts in all these areas that are not in the schools, we don't know with what time while I'm talking to constituents and working.
I've literally sat in multiple meetings with Mr. Joseph and asked a lot of questions that he was more than willing to answer, so that's not an excuse to me. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ding, then Ms. Falls.
Thank you. Mr. Carter said he doesn't know where the money will come from, and I agree with that. We also don't know if there's an increase where those funds will be distributed to. What line items will they go to support? And what impact will it have on student achievement? Unless people who are supporting the budget don't care anything about what impact it has on student achievement and closing the racial achievement gap. I haven't heard anybody demand data on how the achievement gap will be closed and what assurances do we have that increased revenue is going to result in increased achievement. If we're going to make a major change in the budget, such as the one that Ms. Kennedy has suggested, we don't have to figure that out at this table. The administration will have to go back with the directive from the board, cut this much from the budget, and come back to the board with a recommendation as to where those cuts will come from. That's how it's done. We don't have to do it here at this table.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. I was and I am and always will be an educator. I lived through teaching where all of these issues became part of our everyday life because we worked with and we loved children, and we wanted our children's futures to be ensured. However, having now, and I literally say crossed over the line, and now sitting in a position where we have to make decisions about this, I'm torn. I've lost sleep. I've become ill because I see both sides and really understand them. But yet, I have to say, we are elected officials. And honestly, 15 years ago, I'm not even sure that would have meant anything to me. But it does now. I took an oath to do the best I could for the children in the district. But I also took an oath to represent people. And I have received so many calls and texts and emails, and even someone coming to my house to say, Carrick and Overbrook and Bon Air and Knoxville and Southside, the people I represent, there is an awful lot of elderly people. I'm one of them. I'm one of them. I'm a homeowner and I'm also a taxpayer. And when I hear, as Ms. Kennedy said, not to the degree that she said, because I couldn't say what she said, but when I hear when people have to choose who have $1 a month to do something with. Do I pick food? Do I pick medicine? I can't honestly say to those people, I know you have investments in this community and you care about our kids and you care about this district and you care about the city, but choose food over your medicine. I can't do it. And I feel really bad because I understand. I too have sat in meetings with Mr. Joseph. I've come to so many meetings with Mr. Joseph and I understand. And I sat with you and I understand. But people are disabled. People are moving into nursing homes because they can't afford to live. And I'm not saying it's all our fault or whatever, but this is the reality of life. So it's really hard to say, I can't do that to my community. And I understand what we should be doing for our kids and etc. But I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. I say yes, I say no. But obviously I have to make a decision, which I hate. And I think most of you know, I don't have difficulty making decisions. I make a decision and I stick to it and I'll, stand alone, which I have here many times. But this one, this is tough. This really is tough. But I can't look at a 70 or 80-year-old's eyes and say, I'm sorry that you have to go live with your children or you have to move into a nursing home. And I'm sorry I'm so upset about all this, but it's really important. And so I just wanted to share this because my vote would be to stick with this and increase, the money that we need because I know it. But I also know the heart and soul of my community. And I can't do it. So understand the rationale as I've, in a very difficult position, vote no. And it's not because I don't believe in everything you're doing. Thank you. And I believe in where Dr. Hamlet wants to take this district. I believe in everything, and I'm the fighter. I will be there with him. I don't know how we're going to do it, but I know I can't take it from people who just can't do it. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Mr. Gallagher and then Ms. Harbin.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. The way everybody frames the argument, okay, if you vote no for the tax increase, you're against the kids, okay? Now, I'm a cat, rolled my sleeves up for close to 30 years, working in the classroom, coaching football in the city. Excuse me while I pull this up. Okay. Coach, you inspired me to be great and to give everything my all. I appreciate you for that. Thanks so much. Now, the whole deal for that is building relationships. And I think that's where we're missing the boat. This is a great opportunity. We're asked today to come in, tighten the belts, when we'd had absolutely no communication with the city on how we could use them to help us. We're told the revenues stream is limited. Okay, no one's looked into the Uber, Lyft tax, B&B tax that we could split with the city, another revenue source. We had absolutely no communication with our state representatives. Okay, now we keep saying these charter schools are bleeding us to death. but we don't meet with the state representatives. Okay? They didn't. I mean, the administration didn't, okay? We have to have this. We have to have communications. We have to build this foundation. All right? Two of the items today, 24,000, for these kick-ups and all this stuff. That is money that does not go to the kids. Okay? I mean, it sounds like it does, but it doesn't. It doesn't put a textbook in a kid's hand. It doesn't put an extra teacher in the building. It's time to call quits on this spending that does not directly benefit the kids. Okay, the football budget at each high school is $3,200 in 2019. It was $3,200 in 2001. Okay, and this is what I want to stress is the accountability to when this money is spent. Okay, we buy these programs. I was through many computer programs, okay, when we first got the Take Your Attendance program. I forget what that's called. Okay, it didn't merge with our grade book. So really it was junk. When we got all the Dell computers, they had a lifespan of a year. Okay, this is, I think, the stuff that we can control, that we absolutely have to control. What's in the warehouses? Okay, what's sitting around? That's the important stuff. We do duplicate services. Okay, we're contracting out the groups that teachers used to perform. Okay, now there's no trust. Nobody wants to do any extra work, and that's what we have to build, is we have to get the trust back into the schools, and we also have to get the trust back in the public. All right, I live in a district where I got bombarded with emails, text messages, how am I going to afford this? And I know it's not a lot, but Social Security only went up, like you said, $9, okay? And people are stuck on that. And we keep throwing the burden on the homeowners, okay? We should, and this is what I think is exciting about the Imagine project, we're finally going to go out to these corporations, UPMC, whatever. We're finally going to do this, but it's kind of late, So to build the trust up, hold the line on the budget, then go out and do it. Because right now, we're not held in very high eyes as trustworthy. And I think we have to build that trust, and we have to build this teamwork. We have to get out in the community and get these groups to help us, get a meeting with a congressman, get a meeting with the state reps. We need charter school relief. Invite them in. But, just to say like all these cuts are a drop in the bucket, oh, that's only a drop in the bucket, but they add up. They add up. I mentioned in one of the meetings, we're going to pay $25,000 to have a city championship game at Peterson. Why isn't that an in-kind event, or why are we even having it there? We used to play at Heinz Field, and as city coaches, we voted not to play there anymore because it was too expensive. We wanted the money to go to the kids. And I think that's the stuff we really have to take a hard look at. What benefits the most kids with the biggest bang for the buck? And I am totally against school closings. I've been involved in them. I've been involved in mergers. That is not the way to go. But we really have to look hard at this budget and really decide, is the money going to the kids, or is it going to a vendor, or is it going to somebody else that doesn't help our kids? Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
So I've looked at lots of old budgets for the past couple of weeks, and I just wanted to point out that from 2009 to 2016, this district lost 5,203 positions. Now, that was during right-sizing, school closures. Since that, and one could argue that without those positions, maybe we didn't have enough staff to be able to have environments where kids can learn. So I remember the year where we lost 100 paraprofessionals. There used to be kindergarten classes, and there was a paraprofessional that worked with, each kindergarten grade, and then a paraprofessional that worked with first graders. We haven't put those back yet. Now, from 2017 to 2020, we increased 655 positions, nowhere near what we lost. But we just added back nurses. We added back some librarians. Cindy, I know this is really, really, really hard for you, and I appreciate that, but I also know that you've been a champion for bringing back our CTE programs. I mean, I also want to let everybody know that what's on the table right now is not a vote on a tax increase. It's an amendment to take $34 million out of the budget and no tax increase, which adds another 3.9 million, so that's 37 million is what is on the table right now. So I guess we need to go back to cutting thousands of positions or immediately closing schools. I don't think I can understand where that 39 million will come from.
Discussion is not done.
Well, that's why I moved to call the question, so we can end this discussion on the motion, so we can get back to the budget discussion. I have comments on the budget.
It is proper that when the question is called, the debate stops. If I'm correct, I don't think that I'm wrong there. The question has been called. So that means at this time that we will have a vote on the amendment, the amendment.
Mr. Kennedy's amendment to reduce the budget by 5%. For $33,406,207.75, which would include then keeping the millage at the current level. So the yes vote approves the amendment, and no vote is against the amendment. Mr. Carter?
No.
Ms. Edwards?
No.
Ms. Falls?
No.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
Ms. Harbin?
No.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Talaferro?
No.
Mr. Udine?
No.
Ms. Wilson?
No.
Okay, the amendment fails, so the motion, excuse me, it's item 15.01, the budget as presented.
Mr. Udine and then Mr. Carter.
Yeah, I would like to ask people that if they're going to argue for their position, that it not be done by saying, well, if you vote no on this, you're going to cut out all of the art and music programs. We don't know where the cuts are going to be made, and that's just an unfortunate way of trying to make the argument. But it does not in any way suggest that there are not many areas in a $650 million budget that we cannot find many ways of cutting this budget that does not hurt kids.
Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. I told Ms. Jones earlier that I didn't have anything to say. I lied. I do want to address one thing very quickly, though, that Mr. Gallagher had brought up about relationships. And, you know, to some degree, I agree with you that we can do a better job at building a relationship. But I think it would be unfair to say that we haven't tried. I remember very distinctively being on one of the trips to Harrisburg where we did some legislative advocacy ourselves, and we met with then State Senator Randy Volakovich, who was a Republican that represented a small slither of the city, Lincoln, let me tell you, 11th and 12th wards of the city. He is a Republican, and the very third thing he said to us is, you know, I don't really support charter schools, but trying to get anything done in the state's education committees is dead on arrival. Education in this state has become a very partisan issue when children are not partisan individuals. We have politicized the education system and the process. We tout facts that we know are not true. We jump at the opinions of others who are less informed than we are, and we don't do any sort of messaging or correction until it's too late. The reason why this is such a hard decision, and I agree with the emotion that Ms. Falls displayed. Unfortunately, I'm not necessarily capable of displaying sad emotion. But I agree with the fact that this is challenging. When I joined this board, I committed to my residents that I would not support a tax increase. I represent a district that spans 3 different regions of this city and is filled with senior citizens. I myself was displaced by increasing property values and rental rates in my 30-year home of Manchester. So I understand the dilemma here that is before us. I think that it is unfair for us to question, the decrease, increase comment. It's kind of like a trope. Why is the budget, increasing while the population is decreasing? I mean, I can ask the same thing for the Pennsylvania State Prison budget, where that's gone up an additional $5 billion this budget year, and we've had the largest decline in the prison population in the last decade, over the last 3 years since Governor Wolf took office. But yet the prison budget continues to climb. If we are comfortable with spending $52,000 on average per prisoner per year in this state, I don't think that the cost per student is astronomical. I do agree with Ms. Kennedy that says that we could have evaluated other areas where there could have been more cuts, but I blame that on a bad budgeting process altogether. The fact that we start this process at the staff level in February and the board doesn't get the information until October is the issue, because these conversations that should be robust and should be had over the course of a year all have to happen within a 2-week time frame. And fortunately for me, 4 years ago when I joined this board, there was not a tax increase on the table. I apologize to my new colleagues that have to wrestle with such an enormous decision, after having been sworn in. The process, and I applaud Mr. Udine as chair of the Business and Finance Committee for, trying to get a process by which all board members could be educated on the budget, something that I was a strong supporter of, and something that I think that we need to do in a more public fashion so that the public has an understanding of what's in the budget. And those responsible for making budgetary decisions can defend, why, their department's budget has gone up, et cetera, et cetera. I think that it is unfair for some of the comments that I've saw in the public. Well, if you decrease your travel budget, our travel budget is not the problem. We have 5,000 employees, we spend $500,000. I don't think that, $500,000 is going to add up to a 3320. What is Mr. Joseph, for the record, can you provide the exact number of the deficit?
So the exact number is $25,095,517.
Thank you. We could eliminate travel for an entire school year and it still wouldn't fill the gap of the deficit. And our educators would be less developed as a result of us eliminating, professional development costs. This is not an easy thing looking at the budget. It's not an easy thing to make cuts. But it's also, I think, irresponsible for us to allow the public to say that we are doing anything nefarious or that our budgets aren't public enough. Every budget document that we get is available to the public at any time. They can go back through on board docs and look at, the last decade's worth of budgets. I think it is an insult to the professionalism and integrity of our CFO and our superintendent and all those that work year-round on making sure that our district is financially stable. I am angry at the fact that many people make it seem as if this issue with the budget is a new issue. 12 years ago, I was a senior in high school, and there was an issue with the budget then. And back in 2007, what did this board say? Well, we have 4 years. And then it became every 4 years we were going into a financial crisis. It is because of the professional intellect of Mr. Joseph that, we've gone 12 years without having to really deal with the crisis that we are now, approaching upon. And we should commend him for that. It is the fact that, we've had great bond ratings, no serious findings in our audits. And it wasn't until, certain individuals in other political offices decided that they had a disdain for the superintendent that any of this became an issue in the first place. It is unfortunate that we find ourselves as adults having conversations that have nothing to do with children because of our own opinions and our own, self-righteousnesses, or, whatever it is that we have that's holding us back from looking at it objectively and factually. 5 years ago, we can talk about when I came on this board, how low charter school cost was, and I thank Allie Patterson for bringing up the fact that our charter school expenses have nearly doubled, yet they've only gained about 1,000 more students, from the time period in which it doubled. And so yes, charter school costs are excessive, and maybe if they were funded on our school-based budgeting formula, then we wouldn't have such, a hole in that particular department, and I propose that as a solution that we could take forward later. But I think that we have to talk about, the biggest concern for me over the last couple of years, and I served as chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee 2 years of the first 4-year term that I had here, is the increase in PSERs. This is something that we cannot control. You cannot, it was a single-digit number, I believe, when I started the board, and now we're up to like 30% contribution to the PSERs. The systems in this state that govern education are not supportive of student progress. And we have to understand the difference between what we do at this table, what the state puts on us, what the federal government might require of us, et cetera, et cetera. I came into this meeting here with every intention on voting against the budget, not because I don't agree with the budget itself. I wholeheartedly agree that we need to put back the resources that were taken out of the school by irresponsible administration of the past. However, my commitment to my word and my constituents is, I think, where I find myself straddling this tough fence between what I said 4 years ago and, what I'm faced with today. However, I wanted to make it clear that it is not because of the travel budget. It is not because of irresponsible spending. This is not because, people are writing checks to themselves and, are in what our controller alluded to, buying groceries on peak cards. Like, these are not the issues. The issues we're dealing with are real issues that impact real people and real children in real classrooms, and we need to think about that when we have political opinions. So no, raising taxes is most certainly not the politically correct thing to do, and some people would say it's the democratic way, but we have to be realistic with why we're raising taxes. We're not raising taxes to increase the travel budget. We're not raising taxes to, have a larger slush fund, or whatever people might want to call it. That's not it. It's the fact that we have expenses that are constantly growing on mandates that we have no control over. And that's what the largest cost drivers of this budget are. When you look at the percentages from 5 years ago, or 7 years ago now from when you joined the board, or et cetera, when you look at the percentages that we've spent on these particular the largest cost drivers, they've increased exponentially. And that is a problem that we will have to deal with. I don't think that we will deal with it all at this table, but I do think that as we move forward over the next couple of years, this should be a major priority of this board. Thank you.
Mrs. Edwards.
I have heard my colleagues. I certainly know how tough this decision is. I've heard from everybody, also the calls, the emails, the Giant Eagle, the Stop the Talk. So first, I commend every last one of you for being serious about what we're doing tonight and looking at the way our community see it. And of course, the seniors in my community see it the same way. But I, too, live on a fixed income, also volunteer for the Pittsburgh Board of Ed. I'm a taxpayer. I pay all those utilities that come into my home. I'm a parent. I'm a grandparent, and my kids like to go to the mall too. So we do have to find ways to tighten the belt when the time comes. But the major question I asked myself was, how does cutting taxes raise achievement? I couldn't answer that. And I don't know if anybody can, but I could not answer that. Now, as a board member for the newer members coming in, I spend time in the schools. I spend time with principals, parents, students, programs, meeting with them, seeing what they need and what their outcomes can be. I cannot see taking a future from not one of them, black, brown, or white. We owe them the best education we can give. I might be the senior, but that child can be 0 to 17. How does 18 to 100 not be able to figure out how to help 0 to 17? That makes me feel bad. So I'm not going to say that, yeah, life gets in the way. Surely it does. But as I looked at that inequality report of the city, the school district was a part of it also. But our city has bailed out some people. They bailed out Carnegie Library. We've bailed out Parks and Conservancy. We're spending $10 million for police gear. And our school children, our leaders of tomorrow, who we deserve to educate to the fullest extent of all achievement, we got a problem. No more problems, y'all. It's just time to decide that the children are first. Now, can we go back and look at this budget, look at partnerships? I do partnerships all the time. I took Empower House tomorrow today. He's going to help the children for free. For free. Everybody doesn't cost. Drones, all the things, STEAM, STEM, he's going to help them. So find partners who are willing to just help the district and help the schools. Take on your own schools first, the ones in your district, so your district knows that you're working for the children. But in order to do all these other things, I don't know. I don't want to make them pay. I don't want to make them pay for adult decisions. The technology, these telephones, we got one, the kids got one. You buy this phone, but the bill comes every month. So do they in schools, technology in classrooms, curriculum and instruction, what the kids do in after-school programs, how we keep them safe, how we keep them off the street so that the street doesn't swallow them up. So I'm going to go on out on this limb, and I know some people will be happy and some will not. But the lives of the children, to me, are important enough for us to move forward. So I am going to vote yes.
Ms. Telefaro.
Well, I had a nicely crafted statement that I was going to share in my first legislative meeting, but we've talked a lot, and I think there are a lot of things that I have agreed with my colleagues. But I will say this, 2020 is coming. It's a few weeks. And in a lot of the spaces that I've been, I talked about what the year 2020 means to me, and that it provides vision. So we talk about having 2020 vision, right? It provides new perspective, and I think opportunity. And I think this conversation is the beginning of a real conversation that we have to really start to think, what have I done to contribute to the issues and the problems and the things that we're talking about today, and what am I going to do to change that? And I think that's for everybody, for us as a board, for administration, for parents, for teachers, for community members, and for our kids. I think they need to have a good perspective. And I think Ms. Edwards said it best: when we're sitting at this table, we are here for children. And there are a lot of adults who don't want to do things because they don't want to do things, and they're not always thinking about children, whether they have them or not. They're thinking about other things. When I think about myself as a taxpayer, as a city resident, I never want to pay more money than I don't have to. But I think if I got up and I moved to another city or another neighborhood, for that matter, down the street, I could be paying more in taxes. I could be, faced with different issues, right? And so for me, I think it's about justice and it's about opportunity. We sit up and we stand up and pledge allegiance to the flag of these United States of America, every meeting that we have. And at the end of that, we say, and justice for all. But we're unwilling to do what it takes to have justice for all. And that doesn't just go with paying, a tax increase, a small amount, but a small amount can mean a lot to somebody who's on a fixed income. I mean, I'm not balling in the financial department working in nonprofit, so every dollar that I have means something to me, like it does to other people. But I think I'm willing to sacrifice. We sacrifice for a lot of things. If we want to go on vacation, if we want to buy a new car, if we're paying to buy a house, we make sacrifices on a daily basis. We make decisions on a daily basis. We decided as a city to vote for parks, and we said parks are important to us. And not everybody decided to do that, but we decided, it was decided, that decision was made, but we're unwilling to make that decision when it comes to children. And so what are we here for? Why do we come to work every day? Why do we come to this board of education building every single day if it's not for children? And I can't sit here and say that this is the most ideal. I think there are things that we really could take a look at when it comes to the budget. There are areas in which are deep concerns to a lot of my constituents that I spent a good deal of time in my 17 days as a board member. I spent a good deal of time having conversations. I got emails. I sat in meetings. I did my best to understand a bunch of numbers. That is not my thing, but I made it my thing because this is important and I don't take this decision lightly. And so I think we have to do the hard work. It's time to do the hard work. If we are really imagining what schools can look like someday, we got to do the hard work. And it starts today. And I'm happy to support something that I think is going to get us to where we need to be. And that, yes, these are the sins of others that we're paying for right now. But I think it's time that we all kind of pull up our big girl or big boy or big person pants and do what it takes in order for us to make a way and make a path for the success of our kids. So I'll stop there.
Ms. Falls.
It's been implied, because you don't agree or have reasons for not agreeing for this, they don't care about children. Nobody will ever say that to me. I've dedicated my life to children. But that's first and foremost, and I get it. But this isn't that simple. And so I know you don't mean, but meaning everybody, meaning to say that because you say no, that you don't care about children. But please don't ever imply that in my presence. Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Mrs. Kennedy.
Thank you, and I have to agree with Mrs. Falls because I think all of us have our own backgrounds that preceded us coming to this table. In my case, I actually was volunteering in our school district before my children even entered elementary school. I was mentoring women at Shenley High School in the then high technology magnet. But wait, let's go back to before I even returned to Pittsburgh. In my first 6 years out of college, and I was working as an engineer in Southern California, I was judging science fairs in Inglewood, California. And if anyone's familiar with Inglewood, at least back in the 1980s, it was not a well-resourced district. But somehow, despite that, these students pulled out science fair projects. Are they glitzy, glamoury like they are today? No. But they were testing lead in paint, lead in water, the percentage of caffeine in decaffeinated tea. They found a way. And the fact that I remember what these science fair projects were that I judged how many decades ago now, it tells you the impact that these students made on me. I didn't have any children. I didn't even have a steady boyfriend at the time. I was just volunteering in the community. Since I've been back in Pittsburgh, besides volunteering in the schools, I've mentored a lot of people through the local colleges. I've advised. I've helped people out of their own financial quagmires with advice. And yes, I have received awards as a volunteer recognized nationwide or internationally by some of the organizations for my treasury work. So, for people who think that I am making some of my statements lightly, they don't know me. They do not know my background. They do not know my volunteer involvement. And it too is, although probably not intended, but it is insulting. I will always be a conservative financially. No matter how progressive I am with my ideas, I am conservative. It is one of the reasons my family today still has a house. I said everybody's one crisis away from being unable to pay the bills. My family got there. I had a great paying job. I maxed out my 401k every year. We were living the life. We had good vacations. Our kids got what they needed. We still cautioned them on how to buy what they needed versus what they wanted. Then I lost my job with the bubble. 9 months later, I had a serious cancer diagnosis to the point I should not be alive today. I luckily got my treatments in while I was still on COBRA. But post-COBRA was not cheap. The law of COBRA says whoever covers you during COBRA has to offer you a policy covering pre-existing conditions. Nowhere does the law say it has to be affordable or good. Ours was neither. Starting in spring of 2004, we had to pay over $14.50 a month just to pay for our monthly health care premium. That wasn't deductibles, it wasn't copays, it wasn't anything. All right? So after how long, we wiped out our savings, we cashed out our investments, and we withdrew prematurely, therefore paying penalty from the 401k. But why? Because it wasn't right to go on public assistance, because we hadn't exhausted every single asset. We worked with our bank to not lose our house. All right, we are not flush in cash today. My husband and I combined incomes today are less than I made alone 20 years ago, and that's without even considering inflation. So for anyone who thinks that I am making my decision lightly, and it's just because of my constituents, they don't understand how we budget to the penny in my house. We get used cars. The only reason we're adding another car is because it's being given to us. Right? That is not, and we have to pay the insurance, but we're not paying to buy the car. When we had no viable transportation, we were given the access to it a number of years ago because we couldn't afford to repair our cars. All right? We could maybe pay for our kids to have something clean to wear to school, shoes that fit, or buy transportation that was reliable. Guess what? We put it into our kids. We did the best we could for our kids. We advocated them every step along the way. And to this day, I still advocate for kids in need. I make sure, you could tell by some of the questions I ask, is there a way to pay for the children who cannot afford something? Do they have the proper supports? Do they have advisors? There are more clubs that would be possible and more activities in our schools if someone was willing to be the staff advisor. But not all staff members have the time or the ability, and that's okay. But we all are doing the best we can. And I, too, am highly insulted if people think that I am not putting children first. Thank you.
Mr. Udine.
Thank you. I won't take up a lot of time. I just want to address one issue. I don't think you can go down the list of the 2019 PSSA results and look at the schools that are majority black and look at their collective results in reading and in math. We talk about reading a lot because I've been so focused on trying to get us to take phonics seriously, which I have not been successful in doing so far. But the math is even worse. The math scores are worse than the reading. I don't want us to associate putting more money into this school budget structured the way it is with helping kids. It doesn't necessarily help kids because we're putting more money in the budget. It depends on where we put that money and how that money is being put to use. It is sad for me to hear so much talk about the budget, but not as much talk about the specific achievement gap our kids are experiencing. We are failing to give our kids the quality education that they deserve. We're failing. And the administration has to come back to us, I believe, and demonstrate to us convincingly how they're going to change the educational environment that we are in, how they're going to change the results. No more sweet talk, no more general glib comments. We need some solid planning and assurances that we're going to educate our kids at a high level. There are some schools in this district, in this city, that are performing at a high level. They are performing at the level that we look at private schools functioning in reading and in math. What are we doing to replicate that success in all of our schools, other than just asking for more money? More money does not necessarily trickle down to the students. As a matter of fact, more money may just increase the pro rata share that we give for tuition to charter schools. Those of us who like to talk about how opposed to charters we are, and we're going to keep dumping more money into the bucket that they drink from. Thank you.
No, 'cause I haven't had my chance. But that's all right, Ms. Harbin and Mr. Carter.
I want to say that I know this is getting more tense and more tense, but I don't believe anybody in this room is not here for and about kids. And I don't think anybody said anything directly to anyone about not being for and about kids, so I just wanted to make that clear. I think, you know, calling out that you're for and about kids doesn't mean that somebody else is not. I don't think that happened. And I apologize if I did it, but I just think that, you know, people are speaking their truths. As far as achievement, yes, we do need to, all students need to achieve, but taking money away from them is kind of counterintuitive to me. It's not like we're adding millions of dollars to the budget. We're kind of trying to maintain what we have. That's what this tax increase is for, because expenses have outpaced the revenues, and the only revenue we have as a taxing body is this tax. I also want to say that I do understand that people are on a fixed income, and it is not something that I ever would want to do. But when you look at the homeowner that has a home that is not that you paid $200,000, but it's assessed at $200,000, that's a monthly increase of $3.83, which is half of the parks tax, by the way, that plenty of people in poverty actually voted for. If you look at who voted for that, there were plenty of people in poverty that voted for that park tax. And I also believe there are plenty of people in poverty that are willing to invest in schools and children. I just want to clarify one thing. Mr. Gallagher, you asked about an Uber tax and some other taxes. I just want to clarify that that is not something that we can do as a taxing body, collect taxes in that way, right?
No, not us. We have to approach, we have to have open communication so we can do that. They do it in Philadelphia.
Well, but we're not a class one.
We don't have legislative authority to do that.
We don't have legislative authority to do that.
We have to go to,
I see.
we have to go to Harrisburg.
I see. Okay. So I wanted to clarify that. I also want to clarify that PSSA results, the PSSA does not measure reading. That is not a reading assessment. That is it's a different assessment. But I also believe that there are plenty of kids that can read that don't do well in the PSSA. Can somebody just answer me, is the PSSA meant for all kids to be able to pass it, or is it an assessment that, no?
The PSSA is a criterion reference test set for every single grade level that is supposed to identify whether or not students have or are able to demonstrate performance for that grade level every year.
But it's not a reading
based on
assessment.
the state standards. And
It's
you're
standard,
correct, it
yeah.
is not a reading
Okay,
assessment.
I just wanted to clarify that, because that is driving me
Does
crazy.
it at all measure to what extent children are able to read if they're in English language arts? Is that irrelevant to reading? Hello?
So the test is not designed as a reading assessment. It is designed to provide whether or not students are demonstrating proficiency. There are reading pieces in it, but it is not a reading assessment. There are other assessments that provide that information, and we do have assessments that are currently in place in the district that provides Lexiled information to teachers about how their students are doing. Lexiles give you more of a comprehensive, robust amount of information for whether or not students can read, for the underlying skills.
Do we give that test?
Yes, we do.
And what do the results show?
I would have to actually pull that and get it to you.
Right. That's what we hear all the time. Let me get back to you.
Ms. Harbin, were you finished?
I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt your flow. Please continue.
So the other thing that I just wanted to point out is that last year, the board voted to go into the fund balance. That is something that the new board members just got trained by the Pennsylvania School Board Association, and they recommend that you don't go into the fund balance. And my guess is that without a tax increase, that's where that money will come from?
That's correct.
Okay, Mr. Carter.
Thank you. I'm just going to follow up on Ms. Harbin's last comment there. is it also true that with the tax increase, we'll still use money from the fund balance?
That is correct as well.
And then I had another question. With the tax increase, will we still, are you guys still looking to cut Summer Dreamers?
So when we provided our update with the tax increase, Summer Dreamers was not identified as a possible cut.
Say that one more time. Just so I make sure I understand.
Summer Dreamers was not identified as a possible cut.
Just arts and music.
No, is it music or is it instruments?
Arts and music were not identified for cuts. We are not proposing cutting any arts classes. We were cutting the budget that was appropriated for additional new replacement instruments.
Thank you. And so with the increase, you will be able to maintain programming as is this particular school year, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. I actually had something written. I'm not going to read it because there's been so much discussion already this evening, and I know you're shocked because I never read statements, ever. I just wanted to talk about realities. If this budget is not passed today, then January 1 comes, not a single thing can be paid. No salaries, no bills, no utilities, nothing. It'll be done. We have to pass a budget. We're talking about this increase, and nobody wants to see increases. Of course, it's a necessary thing because we are talking about the education of our children. When you look at the increase, it could be for some, depending on the amount of their home, their property, their home, could be as much as maybe $26 additional dollars. $26 additional dollars per year on top of what they're already paying. It isn't like we're talking about 100 or 1,000 or 5,000, up to around $26 additional money per year for our children, for what we're doing. The proposed budget that was first presented to us has been revised twice. So $16 million has been taken out. Someone asked me why we have the costs we do. We have transportation costs. We pay for all the charter school kids to go to their school. We pay for parochial school kids that are bused. We pay for private school kids that are bused. There are some school districts that don't have any busing at all. We have a lot of children with special needs, and they are being bused around to get their necessary education. That's some costs that some school districts do not have. In terms of charters, our costs have been going up, and by the way, Mr. Gallagher, this administration does indeed talk with legislators all the time. They're constantly working on trying to get charter school reform. It should be back to what it was originally when the state paid for them and not the local school districts. Actually, we were in Harrisburg yesterday and today. We did exactly that. We talked about the budget. We talked about charter schools. There actually was a bill that was defeated in November that would have helped us, So we know that the state is there to help. We hope they will eventually, they keep talking about it. The costs are outrageous across the state, and they do want to take care of that. Our pension costs, as Mr. Carter mentioned before, is up. Our utility costs. We have buildings. We have children in our buildings. We can't allow them to not have lights and heat. You know, it's just like everybody's homes. We all have increased costs. We all do. Our medical costs for our employees. I mean, a large part of our budget is paying for our people that work with our children and keep our buildings maintained. That's what we do. This is a part of what we have. That's a reality. Just as your medical costs at home, your individual families are increased, so are ours. And we try our best to negotiate with the health companies, whichever ones we have. We do what we can to negotiate the costs down as much as possible. But we still have increased costs. And again, if we could have the legislature or someone help us with keeping these costs down with medical companies, you know, it would help us all. But right now, everybody says the same thing, and we're still dealing with high prescription costs and everything else. I don't want to see us get into a place where we have layoffs. We are trying to recover from what we've done before. There's been a lot of disinvestment in our children, and we are trying to maintain it. We just are bringing back our libraries. For the first time ever, we've had a nurse in every building. We never had a nurse in every building. We find we have more fragile children with all kinds of needs in every building now. And you don't want it to find out that, someone had some type of an episode and there was no one around to help. We now have that. That costs money. To have a nurse in every building, that costs money. To have librarians costs money. We want our children to have musical backgrounds, instruments. We just now are getting ready to cut our instruments. We're just bringing that back. Looking at bands, people look at how small our bands are at the high school level. That's because we haven't had that programming at the middle school and the elementary school. You can't expect large bands if you don't have anything feeding into it. It all costs money. Suburban schools, I hate to even sometimes see North Allegheny when they come to the Labor Day parade. They almost take up three blocks because they have the money to fund that. Our children deserve something too. Obviously, we can't afford that, but we should be able to give our children a rounded education. We need to provide them those extras. We can't have everything cut, so the only thing they have left are basics, reading and math, and a few other things, with no athletics, no music, no art. We have wonderful musicals, and as it is, there's barely enough money for them, and they're all out there begging for money and trying to raise money to be able to put on their productions because we can't afford large amounts of money to go to our productions. So it's all critical, it's all necessary. Our fund balance, big companies all have fund balances. I know when I was with the credit union, we have fund balances there. You have to maintain it, it's a requirement. We've been chipping away our fund balance, chipping it away. If we had to go to strictly just our fund balance, as Mr. Joseph points out, our fund balance to pay all the bills that we have, all the salaries and everything that we have to take care of as a school district would last a month and a half. So it isn't that our fund balance is something that we can rely on as a rainy day fund, because it's not going to work. It's not going to work. This is very important for us. It's a hard decision. It's never an easy decision when you talk about people's money. It never, ever is. But we also have to be realistic. Again, no budget passed today. January 1, nobody gets paid, no salaries, no anything. We'll just be shutting down our schools. There will be nothing happening. And at this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Weiss to do the roll call vote on this budget, please.
So this is the budget as presented. Mr. Carter.
Oh, we need a second. We need a second and a motion in a second.
I'm sorry.
I make a motion that we pass this budget as read.
I'll second it.
All right, it was moved by Ms. Edwards and seconded by Ms. Harbin. Mr. Weiss, go ahead.
Carter.
I think my last name is Udine today. No. Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Ms. Falls?
No.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
Ms. Harbin?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
No.
Ms. Talaferro?
Yes.
Mr. Udine?
No.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Budget's passed 5-4.
All right, we're now moving to item 15.02, the real estate property tax levies for fiscal year 2020. The Board of Public Education of School District of Pittsburgh hereby levies and assesses for the fiscal year beginning on the first day of January 2020 a school tax of 10.07 mils on each dollar of the total assessment of all real property assessed and certified for taxation in this district, being at the rate of 1.007 on each $100 of assessed value of taxable real property. Just making sure. Okay, just making sure. Do we have a motion and a second to pass this, to approve it?
Motion to pass.
Ms. Teleferro,
So moved.
seconded by Ms. Edwards. Can we have a whole roll call vote, Mr. Weiss, please?
Excuse me, please, could you
Oh, yes.
clarify what we're voting on?
Okay, Mr. Weiss.
Voting on the real estate tax of 10.07 mils, which is, what an increase, Mr. Joseph, 0.24?
It's 2.3%, so in terms of millage, it's a 0.23 mil increase.
Okay. Which is the index.
That's correct.
Mr. Carter?
I'm going to abstain.
Well, I would just say this, and I don't get into these debates, but
It's an abstention or a no, so.
if you approve the budget, if you vote to approve the budget, it's hard to
I get it.
understand how you don't fund the budget. That's all I'll say.
I
But you're
got you.
abstaining.
Thank you.
Ms. Edwards? Pardon? No. So Mr. Carter abstained. Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Ms. Falls?
No.
Mr. Gallagher?
No.
Ms. Harbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy?
No.
Ms. Talaferro?
Yes.
Mr. Dean? No. Ms. Wilson?
Yes?
The motion fails 4-4. So at this point, we do not have a millage in place for January 1, and the budget that the board approved will not be funded. So we'll move to the earned income tax.
All right, we're moving to item 15.03, the earned income tax levies for fiscal year 2019. The Board of Education does hereby levy and assess for the fiscal year beginning on the first day of January 2020 a tax of 1%. Are there any questions or comments?
Total of 2. Do we have the resolutions there? I don't have them here.
I don't have, I just have 15, I don't have a resolution here. Po-
There are no increases there. The amounts are set by state statute, so for earned income, it's 2%, that's statutory, and for a really transfer, that's 1%.
There are 2 earned income taxes you're voting on, the total 2%. They're levied under 2 different statutes. Just wanted to make sure. When the elected board was created, the legislature enacted the earned income tax authority under 2 statutes to total 2%. I just want to make sure they were both in the resolution.
Okay, go ahead.
You got a motion?
Yes,
Can I just ask a
no,
clarifying?
we don't. Yes, go ahead.
Can I ask a
I'm sorry.
clarifying question of Mr. Weiss? So since the tax increase or the millage rate did not pass, that means effective January 1st, we cannot levy taxes. Therefore, there is a over $182 million hole in the budget right now because we cannot collect that revenue.
Yes, you're correct.
Thank you.
Question, point of order.
Go ahead.
Is it possible for us to commit to work between now and the end of the year to come to an agreement? I mean, you make it sound as though tomorrow the lights go off.
Well, if this meeting ends with the real estate tax unpassed, I would recommend to Ms. Wilson that this meeting be recessed to a date certain and some resolution be sought on this real estate tax issue, because as Mr. Joseph has pointed out, there is a hole in the budget, and there's no way the district can function without real estate taxes. So the point being, if this meeting, at the end of it, there is no resolution to the real estate tax issue, the meeting should be recessed to a date certain, at which time the board has to take up the issue of real estate taxes.
Which means we have to meet, if we do this, we obviously have to, we'll have to do this before December 31st, otherwise, yes, the lights will go out, because I don't know how you're going to come up with $182 million with what we're already existing on.
We just have to work at it between now and then.
All right, let's pick a date right now.
Well,
December 25th, does that work for anybody?
Works for me.
She wants to meet on December 25th.
I'm not doing anything that day.
No, seriously, which date?
That's Kwanzaa.
Seriously, though. We're not.
No, it's not.
We're not doing that. 27th is a Friday. Then we have Monday the 30th and Monday the 31st. That's what we have. Oh boy, it's an important issue. I mean, we didn't make a decision today. We have to do something by that time. So which date would you prefer, guys? Friday the 27th? Friday the 27th it is.
Should we pick a time?
When you say maybe early, what does that mean? Would we be able to do anything by noon, Mr. Joseph? Any suggestions? Would noon be all right for the rest of you?
Fine with me.
So it's the board's prerogative to set whatever time and date the meeting occurs at.
Noon, it's our prerogative if we pick noon. All right, okay, noon.
Okay, at the end of the meeting, we will make that announcement, so that's when it's set. But we have other matters here we have to consider.
Okay. So we're suspending this particular portion of the meeting to December 27th at noon,
Well,
correct?
we'll see how the rest of these go, but at least 1501. We're not dealing with the earned income tax. Was there a motion on this? I don't
So
think
also have one other housekeeping matter. So since the millage was not passed, the homestead farmstead exemption would need to be pulled because that's based on the 10.07 millage rate.
Is there anything remaining on here that we can deal with? Because what it sounded like from you, since we didn't pass the other, we can't do anything else right now.
You can pass, I believe, and I'll defer to Mr. Weiss. I believe you can
approve
levy
the
the other
others.
taxes.
All right.
They're not linked.
All right. So the earned income tax levy we can do.
All of them you can do.
Okay, could I have a motion and a second for 15.03, please?
So moved.
Ms. Edwards? Second. Mr. Carter?
And for clarification purposes, this is the tax that we divert 0.25% of to the city, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Ms. Falls?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher? Yes. Ms. Harbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Talaferro?
Yes.
Mr. Udine?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
The earned income tax is approved.
Thank you. We'll move now to 15.04, realty transfer tax. This will begin the first day of January 2020, a tax of 1% of the value of each transfer of any real of any interest in real property situated within the school district upon the terms and conditions and subject to the exceptions set forth in the remaining portions of this resolution. Are there any questions or comments? All right, hearing none, could I have a motion and a second to approve this?
So moved.
Mr. Udine? Mr. Carter? All right, Mr. Weiss?
So vote on the transfer tax, which is the same rate it was. That is the rate permitted by law. Mr. Carter?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Ms. Falls? Yes. Mr. Gallagher? Yes. Ms. Harbin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kennedy?
Yes.
Ms. Talaferro?
Yes.
Mr. Udine?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Motion's approved.
All right, and according to Mr. Joseph, we cannot act on the homestead and farmstead exclusion.
That's correct.
So we will move on to items 16.01, 2, and 3, the financial and controllers reports for the month ending November 2019, and the EBE report for the month of December. Any questions or comments on this? All right, hearing none, are there any announcements to be brought before us this evening that do not require a legislative vote? And you take this over for me for a minute.
Any announcements? Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you. Many of the meetings I've attended, Mr. Tokarski has also attended, and I believe he has sent mail to all board members about two different things. Mr. Tokarski, for those who do not know him, is with the Department of Public Safety. And there are two programs that our applications are out now. The first one, the Citizens Police Academy for spring 2020, which is for adults. Will begin on February 5th, and your applications are due by January 31st. I have a hard copy of an application, and you can get them online or through email. The second one is more student-focused, and that's Pittsburgh's Spring 2020 Student Police Academy, and it's for an opportunity to train, learn, and experience what it's like to be a police officer in their simulated police academy. And apparently, for some of the folks who've gone through this have then gone on to the police academy. All right, so again, the applications are due to Mr. Tokarski this time. The deadline is Wednesday, May 4th, 2020. And those applications also require parent signature. And those classes begin on Wednesday, May 11th, and that'll be from 6 to 9 at night. And if anyone needs these, I will leave these hard copies here at in the board office, and if you need a copy, you please contact the board office, and she can get you a PDF of these or something, or make a copy. Thank you very much.
Ms. Falls?
Thank you, Mr. Carter. I'd just like to recognize I'd just like to congratulate the recognition of Mrs. Angel Washington, the principal at Carrick High School, as a monthly winner of the non-instructional award. I would like to also say that there are 3 new board members, that you have attended the PSBA training, and Mr. Carter will be going. I think that was, they provided an adequate training. We can do more. You need to let me know. I'll be glad to set it up, and et cetera. But again, I want to thank PSBA for reaching out to our new board members and the rest, anyone else who wanted to attend. And I found it very helpful as well. I would like to congratulate Ms. Mike and her whole entire staff for the Skills USA competition that was yesterday at Greenway. It was good to be back with kids and to be part of their competition. And I found myself saying, okay, stop. You're not their teacher, stop. But It was very interesting, and the results of that, I think, are somewhere. I read them, but will be acknowledged. Anyone who won in first place will go on to states now for Skills USA. So congratulations, Ms. Mike's staff and anyone who participated. And the kids were so well behaved. And again, please keep in your prayers our military, past, present, and future, who allow us to speak as we are right now in this arena. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Thank you. Mr. Gallagher?
Thank you, Mr. Carter. You know, I know tonight was a tough thing, but I'd like to share a quote from Lieutenant General Hal Moore. You know, in my lifetime, I was blessed to see many, many leadership speakers. Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, you know, and you name any college coach. But the best quote I ever heard, Lieutenant General Hal Moore, who is a legend, there's a movie about him, We Were Once Soldiers, had the quote, "The hay is never in the barn." The hay is never in the barn, just remember that. We're coming back December 27th, rolling the sleeves up and getting to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Any other comments? Yes, Mr. Dean.
If you want to plan for a short time, like a year, plant rice. If you want to plan for 10 years, plant a tree. If you want to plan for 100 years, educate the children. Confucius.
Thank you, Mr. Erdine. Are there any other announcements to be brought forth this evening? At this time, I will turn it back over to Ms. Wilson to call for the motion.
Okay, this meeting is recessed, not adjourned. It is recessed until December 27th at noon.
I would also note that this will not be the subject of the Sunshine ad because it is being recessed. That is why it's being recessed to a date and time certain. Be in this room.